Have you ever wondered if some meetings aren't just chance, but destiny in disguise? In the heart of Denver, during the worst blizzard in decades, an encounter between a successful entrepreneur and a homeless dog would unravel a plot so shocking it would change both their lives forever. This isn't just another rescue story. It's a tale of loyalty, betrayal, and a four-legged hero who saved more than just a lonely heart. If you love stories that warm your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. Now let's dive into this incredible true story that proves sometimes our greatest protectors come with paws and a tail. The howling wind whipped through downtown Denver's steel and glass canyons, turning the falling snow into stinging needles of ice. Rachel Anderson hurried through the deserted streets, her designer boots crunching through fresh powder as she left her office well past midnight. The latest buyout threat from Cooper Technologies had kept her working late again, poring over contracts and financial reports until her eyes burned. That's when she saw him, a massive shape huddled against the entrance of Morning Brew, Maria's coffee shop. At first, she thought it was a pile of snow, but then it moved. A pair of soulful brown eyes met hers through the swirling snow, and something in them stopped her cold. The dog was enormous, a Bernese mountain dog mix by the look of him, but terribly thin. His thick coat was matted with ice and street grime, yet there was a nobility in how he held himself, a ghost of former grandeur. Rachel had always been practical, focused, driven. You don't build a successful tech startup by following your heart. But something about those eyes, that look of quiet dignity in the face of desperation, reached past all her careful walls. "Hey there, big guy," she said softly, approaching with careful steps. "You must be freezing out here." The dog watched her, not fearful but cautious, as if he'd learned the hard way that hope could hurt. When she slowly extended her hand, he sniffed it gently, such polite manners for a street dog. Then ever so slightly, his tail wagged. That small gesture of trust would end up saving not just the dog's life, but Rachel's as well, though she had no way of knowing that then. She only knew that she couldn't leave him here to freeze. "What do you say we get you somewhere warm?" she asked, shrugging off her cashmere scarf to create a makeshift leash. "I'm pretty sure my building's no pet policy can make an exception for one snowy night." As they walked through the strengthening storm, Rachel had no idea she was being watched. In a black SUV parked across the street, a figure spoke quietly into a phone. "Anderson just left the office. No, she wasn't carrying anything, but she's got a dog with her now. Yes, I'll keep following her." The storm was about to get much worse, and not just because of the weather. The elevator in Rachel's luxury apartment building hummed softly as she and her newfound companion ascended to the 23rd floor. The dog, still wrapped in her designer scarf, left small puddles of melting snow on the marble floor. His eyes never left her face, as if memorizing every detail, assessing her with an intelligence that seemed almost human. The ding of the elevator pierced the silence, and as they stepped into the hallway, Rachel's phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus Cooper's office, the third tonight. She ignored it, fumbling with her keys instead. The dog waited patiently beside her, his presence oddly comforting in the empty corridor. Inside her apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Denver's glittering skyline, now obscured by curtains of white. Rachel moved quickly, gathering towels from her pristine bathroom. The dog stood in her entryway, politely waiting for permission to move further. No ordinary stray, she thought again, noticing how he carefully wiped his paws on the mat without prompting. "Come here, boy," she called softly, patting the heated bathroom floor. "Let's get you warmed up." As she gently dried his coat, her fingers found something, a small bump under his fur. Parting the matted hair revealed a tiny scar, the kind left by a microchip implant. This dog had a story, a past, perhaps even a family searching for him. Rachel made a mental note to have a vet scan for the chip tomorrow. The dog's coat, once dried, revealed a beautiful mix of Bernese Mountain Dog and what looked like Golden Retriever, an unusual and striking combination. Despite his obvious hunger, he ate the leftover chicken from her fridge with impeccable manners, taking small, careful bites. "You're quite the gentleman," Rachel mused, watching him from her kitchen island. "I think I'll call you Atlas. You look like you've carried the weight of the world on your shoulders." Atlas's tail wagged at the name, and for the first time, his eyes held a spark of joy. Rachel smiled, but the moment was interrupted by another buzz from her phone. This time, it wasn't a message, but an email alert. Someone had attempted to access her company's secure servers. Again. Rachel frowned, opening her laptop. As founder and CEO of SecureFlow, a revolutionary cybersecurity startup, she was used to attempted breaches. But lately, they'd grown more frequent, more sophisticated. They'd started right around the time Cooper Technologies had made their first buyout offer, an offer that had felt more like a threat. Atlas padded over, resting his large head on her knee as she worked. His presence was oddly grounding as she sifted through security logs and access attempts. Something caught her eye. The breach attempts were coming from multiple IP addresses, but they all shared a peculiar pattern. "This isn't random," she muttered, scratching Atlas behind his ears. "Someone's trying to find something specific." A sudden knock at her door made them both jump. Atlas's demeanor changed instantly. His hackles rose, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Rachel checked the time. 1:43 a.m. Who would be at her door at this hour? Through the peephole, she saw her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, wringing her hands anxiously. Rachel opened the door, keeping Atlas behind her. "Rachel, dear, I'm so sorry to disturb you," Mrs. Chen whispered, her eyes darting nervously down the hallway. "But I saw something strange earlier. A man was asking about you at the front desk, showing your picture. He claimed to be from building maintenance, but I've never seen him before. And just now I heard him in the stairwell, talking on the phone about accessing your floor." Atlas's growl deepened, and Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm raging outside. She thanked Mrs. Chen and quickly closed and double-locked her door, her mind racing. First the server breach attempts, now this. She moved to her windows, scanning the street below. Through the swirling snow, she spotted a dark figure in the building's entrance, speaking into a phone. Even from this height, something about their posture seemed menacing. Atlas pressed against her leg, his body tense and alert. In the reflection of the window, Rachel caught movement, a shadow passing under her door. Someone was in the hallway, right outside her apartment. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The text message made her blood run cold. "You should have taken the offer, Rachel. Some things are worth more than money. Check your email." With trembling fingers, Rachel opened her inbox. There, in a message from an anonymous sender, were detailed personal photos of her leaving work, meeting friends, even sleeping in her bed. They'd been watching her for weeks. Atlas moved silently to the door, his ears forward, listening intently. Rachel's mind raced through her options. The police would take too long in this weather. Building security was clearly compromised. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. She grabbed her laptop, emergency bag, and car keys. Years of paranoia in the tech world had taught her to always have a backup plan, always be ready to move. But as she reached for the door, Atlas blocked her path, his body language clear: danger. Instead, he led her to the kitchen, nudging her toward the service elevator, a remnant from when the building was first constructed, now used mainly by maintenance staff. Rachel remembered the building plans she'd studied when buying the apartment. The service elevator had its own power supply and descended directly to the underground parking garage. As they quietly slipped into the service elevator, Rachel heard her apartment door being opened. Atlas pressed close to her, his presence steady and reassuring. In that moment, she realized this dog wasn't just lost. He was exactly where he needed to be. The parking garage was eerily silent when they emerged. Rachel's Tesla waited in its assigned spot, but Atlas's hackles rose again. She paused, listening. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, multiple sets. There was no time to think. Rachel opened her car door, ushering Atlas inside. As she started the engine, her phone buzzed one final time. Going somewhere? The Tesla's silent engine was a blessing as they pulled out of the garage. In her rearview mirror, Rachel caught glimpses of dark figures emerging from the stairwell. But by then, she and Atlas were already merging onto the snow-covered streets of downtown Denver. As they drove through the stormy night, Rachel glanced at her newfound protector. Atlas sat alertly in the passenger seat, his eyes scanning their surroundings. She had saved him from the cold, but somehow he had just saved her from something far worse. What she didn't know yet was that this night was just the beginning. The dog she had rescued wasn't just a stray. He was about to lead her to a truth that would shake Denver's tech world to its core.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
And somewhere in the city, in a warmly lit office, Marcus Cooper was receiving a very angry phone call about a failed operation and an unexpected complication. A dog that wasn't supposed to be there. The storm raged on, but Rachel felt an odd sense of calm. With Atlas by her side, she wasn't running away. She was moving toward something. Tomorrow, they would begin unraveling the mystery. But for tonight, two souls who had found each other in a snowstorm were exactly where they needed to be, together and in motion. On the seat between them, Rachel's phone lit up with another email alert. The subject line read, Project Atlas, Phase 1, compromised. Neither Rachel nor her canine companion knew it yet, but that email would lead them down a path that would expose a conspiracy bigger than either of them could imagine. The real storm was just beginning. The icy streets of Denver stretched, before them empty and white. But in that moment, as Atlas pressed his warm head against her shoulder, Rachel knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice in that snowstorm. Sometimes, the biggest changes in our lives come not from careful planning, but from following our hearts in moments of crisis. As they disappeared into the snowy night, the city lights fading behind them, Rachel couldn't help but smile. She had always trusted technology, algorithms, and data, but tonight she was trusting something far more ancient and powerful. The bond between a human and a dog who had chosen to protect her. Little did she know, Atlas had recognized something in her too, something that would make him break his own cover, risk his own mission to keep her safe. But that was a revelation for another day, when the snow cleared and the truth began to emerge from the shadows of Denver's gleaming towers. For now, they drove on through the storm, two guardians united by fate, destiny, or perhaps something even more mysterious. The night was long, but dawn was coming, and with it, a story that would change everything. The first rays of dawn painted the snow-covered Colorado mountains in shades of rose gold as Rachel's Tesla pulled into the quiet parking lot of the Mountain View Pet Hospital. She had driven through the night, taking back roads and switching directions randomly, her years of cybersecurity training kicking in. Atlas had remained vigilant beside her, occasionally directing her attention to cars that followed too closely or lingered too long at intersections. Dr. Emily Chen was already waiting at the clinic side entrance, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. Rachel had known Emily since college. They'd been roommates at MIT before Emily chose veterinary medicine over software engineering. More importantly, Rachel knew she could trust her. "You look like you've had quite a night," Emily said, ushering them inside. Her eyes widened at the sight of Atlas. "And who is this magnificent creature?" Inside the warm clinic, Atlas underwent a thorough examination. As Emily ran the microchip scanner over his shoulder, her expression changed from professional interest to confusion. She ran it again, then again. "Rachel, this is unusual. His chip is military grade, encrypted. I've never seen anything like it." Rachel leaned forward, her tech interest piqued. "Military grade, on a stray dog." Emily nodded slowly, pulling up the scanner's display. "The only data I can access shows he was part of something called Project Guardian. Everything else is locked behind security. I can't breach." Atlas sat calmly through the examination, his eyes never leaving Rachel. There was an intelligence in his gaze that seemed even more remarkable now, knowing his possible background. "Otherwise, he's in surprisingly good health for a stray," Emily continued. "Some minor malnourishment, but his muscle tone suggests he hasn't been on the streets long. High-end dental work, evidence of extensive training." She paused, meeting Rachel's eyes. "This is no ordinary lost pet, Rachel. What's really going on?" Rachel hesitated, then told her everything: the attempted server breach, the stalker, the midnight escape. As she spoke, Emily's face grew increasingly concerned. "You need to see something," Emily said, walking to her office computer. She pulled up a news article from 3 months ago. "There's been a string of break-ins at research facilities across Colorado. The targets all seem random: biotech, tech startups, even a veterinary research lab. But look at this security footage." The grainy video showed a large dog, similar to Atlas, leading a security team through a facility. The dog moved with purpose, checking corners, responding to hand signals. "Military working dogs aren't just trained for combat," Emily explained. "Some are specialized in cybersecurity, trained to detect specific electronics, storage devices, even particular chemical signatures associated with certain types of technology." Rachel's mind raced. The timing of Cooper Technologies' aggressive buyout attempts, the break-ins, Atlas appearing just when someone was trying to access her servers. It couldn't be coincidence. "Emily, I need you to tell me everything you know about Project Guardian." Emily typed rapidly, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Most of it's classified, but there are rumors in the veterinary community. It was a joint military private sector initiative, training dogs for corporate and cybersecurity. The program was officially shut down 6 months ago, but..." She trailed off, reading intently. "Rachel, look at this." The program's primary, private sector partner was Cooper Technologies. Atlas's ears perked up at the company's name. Rachel remembered how he had reacted to the intruder at her apartment, how he had known to lead her to the service elevator. "He's not just a military dog," Rachel whispered. "He's a corporate whistleblower." The morning sun now streamed through the clinic's windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Atlas pressed against Rachel's leg, and she felt the weight of what they had stumbled into. This wasn't just about a hostile takeover anymore. It was about whatever secret Cooper Technologies was willing to commit crimes to protect. Emily printed out Atlas's medical records, carefully documenting everything. "You can't go home, Rachel. They'll be watching your apartment, your office, everywhere they think you might go." "I know," Rachel said, scratching Atlas behind his ears. "But I have a backup plan. Remember that crazy purchase I made last year?" Emily's eyes widened. "The old ranger station. Rachel, that's perfect. It's completely off the grid." The ranger station had been an impulse buy, a reminder of childhood summers spent in the mountains. Rachel had renovated it with solar panels and a satellite internet connection, but kept it off all official records. Not even her board of directors knew about it. As if understanding the plan, Atlas wagged his tail. Rachel smiled, but her expression quickly turned serious. "Emily, I need you to do something for me. Access SecureFlow's secure server. I'll give you the emergency credentials. There's a file called Project Phoenix. Download it, then wipe all traces. If I'm right about what's happening, that file is what they're really after." While Emily worked on the secure terminal, Rachel used the clinic's landline to make one call. Tom Sullivan, her business partner and head of development, answered on the first ring. "Rachel, where are you? Cooper's people are here, claiming you've agreed to a merger. They've got paperwork with your signature on it." "Tom, listen carefully. Initiate Protocol 0. Full server lockdown, no exceptions. Then get somewhere safe. They're not just trying to take the company, they're trying to steal Phoenix." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Tom had helped develop Project Phoenix, a revolutionary AI security system that could predict and prevent cyber attacks before they happened, if it fell into the wrong hands. "Be careful, Rachel," Tom said quietly. "Maria from the coffee shop, she saw men breaking into your apartment this morning. They're not even trying to hide anymore." After ending the call, Rachel turned to find Atlas watching her intently. In the morning light, she could see faint scars on his muzzle, telling their own story of loyalty and sacrifice. Whatever he had seen at Cooper Technologies, whatever had made him run, he had chosen to protect her. Now it was her turn to protect what mattered. Emily returned with a small flash drive. "It's done. The file's secured, and I've planted false leads in the system. But Rachel..." She hesitated. "The timestamps on these break-ins, they all correspond with major tech companies backing out of deals with Cooper Technologies. Whatever's really going on, it's bigger than just your company." Rachel pocketed the drive, her mind already mapping out their next moves. The ranger station was a 4-hour drive into the mountains, assuming the snow hadn't made the back roads. Impassable. They would need supplies and a way to detect if they were being followed. Atlas nudged her hand with his nose, then walked to the clinic's back door, his meaning clear. It was time to move. "Emily, thank you. But after we leave, forget we were here. If anyone asks..." "I know," Emily smiled sadly. "Just be careful, both of you." As Rachel and Atlas slipped out through the back of the clinic into the brightening day, neither of them noticed the small drone hovering high above the building, its camera following their movement. In a sleek office downtown, Marcus Cooper watched the feed with growing frustration. "Find them!" he snapped into his phone. "That dog knows our protocols, our security systems, and now he's with the one person who could expose everything." He paused, listening to the response. "No, you don't understand. If Project Phoenix goes public, we don't just lose contracts. We lose everything." The sun climbed higher over the Colorado mountains as Rachel's Tesla wound through quiet suburban streets, Atlas alert in the passenger seat. They had supplies to gather, plans to make, and a mystery to unravel, but first they had to disappear. In the growing light of day, a woman who had trusted in technology and a dog who had seen its darkest uses prepared to expose a truth that would shake the foundations of the tech world. The storm had passed, but the real danger was just beginning. The ranger station stood silhouetted against the late afternoon sky, its solar panels glinting in the fading sunlight. Rachel watched through binoculars from their vantage point half a mile away, Atlas lying still beside her in the snow. Nothing had moved near the cabin for the past hour except mountain wildlife. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Atlas's ears suddenly pricked forward, his body tensing. Rachel followed his gaze to a patch of trees near the station's generator shed. There, a flash of movement, too deliberate to be an animal. Someone was waiting for them. I should have known it wouldn't be this easy," Rachel muttered, reaching for her satellite phone. The text from Tom confirmed her suspicions. Cooper Technologies had accessed SecureFlow's employee files. Her ownership of the ranger station might have been off the books, but her hiking records and social media posts from years ago weren't. The temperature was dropping rapidly as the sun dipped behind the mountains. They needed shelter before nightfall, but the one place they had counted on was compromised. Atlas nuzzled her hand, then began moving parallel to the station, keeping to the tree line. Rachel followed, trusting his instincts. 100 yards through the woods, they found fresh snowmobile tracks. 2 sets heading toward the back of the property. Rachel's mind raced. The station had a rear entrance, rarely used and almost invisible unless you knew where to look. It had been her favorite secret hideaway as a teenager, back when the station belonged to her uncle. Atlas froze, his nose working the air. From their new position, Rachel could see 2 men in winter gear moving between the trees, their weapons visible under their jackets. Not Cooper's usual corporate security. These looked more like mercenaries. Her phone vibrated silently. An email from an encrypted address she recognized as Emily's. Urgent. Cooper Technologies announced merger with Quantum Defense Systems this morning. Military contracts. Classified projects. Something called Operation Watchdog. Rachel's blood ran cold. Quantum Defense Systems was notorious in tech circles for their autonomous security systems and their complete lack of ethical constraints. If they were involved, this was bigger than corporate espionage. A sharp crack echoed through the trees, the sound of the station's back door being forced open. Rachel watched as one of the men emerged, carrying what looked like electronic scanning equipment. They weren't just waiting for her, they were searching for something. Atlas's growl was almost subsonic, felt more than heard. His eyes were fixed on the men, but his body was angled toward a narrow game trail leading away from the station. Rachel understood. They needed to move, now. As they carefully backed away, Rachel's boot caught a buried branch. The crack seemed deafening in the winter silence. One of the men spun toward the sound, raising his weapon. Atlas reacted instantly, lunging forward with a thunderous bark that echoed off the mountainside. The surprise and volume sent the men diving for cover, giving Rachel precious seconds to sprint into the deepening shadows of the forest. She ran, following Atlas's lead as he wove between trees and over fallen logs. Behind them, shouts and the whine of starting snowmobiles broke the mountain silence. But Atlas wasn't running blindly. He was leading her somewhere. The trail narrowed, descending sharply. Rachel could hear the snowmobiles getting closer, their engines echoing off the rocky slopes. Then she saw where Atlas was heading, a narrow crevice in the rock face, barely visible behind a fallen pine. They squeezed through just as headlights swept the area. The crevice opened into a small cave, completely hidden from the trail. Rachel pressed against the cold rock, trying to slow her breathing as boots crunched on snow outside. "They have to be here somewhere," a gruff voice said. "The dog's tracks lead this way." "Doesn't matter," another voice replied. "They can't hide forever. Besides, we found what we were looking for at the station. Call it in. Tell Cooper we've confirmed the backup server location." Rachel's eyes widened in the darkness. The ranger station's hidden basement had indeed housed a backup server, but not for secure flow. It contained something far more valuable. Evidence she had been gathering about suspicious patterns in the tech industry, including Cooper's involvement in multiple corporate raids. Atlas pressed against her legs, offering warmth and reassurance. As they waited in tense silence, the voices and snowmobile sounds gradually faded, but they remained still for another hour as darkness fell completely. Using her phone's dim light, Rachel examined the cave. It was larger than she'd initially thought, showing signs of previous use, old carvings on the walls, remnants of campfires. A perfect hideout, one that wasn't on any hiking map. "You knew about this place, didn't you?" she whispered to Atlas. His training as part of Project Guardian must have included detailed knowledge of the area. Once again, he had protected not just her safety, but crucial information. The satellite phone lit up with another encrypted message from Emily. Traced Operation Watchdog, joint project between Cooper Tech and Quantum Defense. Training dogs for corporate warfare, but something went wrong. Multiple test subjects escaped 6 months ago. Atlas wasn't the only one. Rachel ran her hand through Atlas's thick fur, feeling the raised scar of his military chip. He wasn't just an escapee, he was evidence. Evidence of whatever had gone so wrong that trained military dogs had chosen to flee, to expose their creators. "We need to find the others," Rachel said softly. Atlas's ears perked up. They're the key to understanding what Cooper and Quantum are really planning. A distant howl echoed through the mountain night, answered by another from a different direction. Atlas stood, his posture alert but not alarmed. Rachel remembered something from Emily's files. Project Guardian had worked extensively with Bernese mountain dogs and similar breeds, chosen for their intelligence and social nature. Those howls weren't wolves, they were signals. Atlas moved to the cave entrance, looking back at Rachel expectantly. The immediate danger had passed, but they couldn't stay here. The other dogs were out there, and with them, the truth about Project Guardian. As they emerged into the starlit night, Rachel realized their escape had become a mission. Cooper Technologies hadn't just created a team of cybersecurity dogs. They had created something they couldn't control, something that had developed its own agenda. The mountain air was crisp and clear, the snow reflecting starlight bright enough to cast shadows. Atlas led the way confidently, following a path only he could perceive. Behind them, the ranger station's lights glowed faintly, a reminder of the life Rachel had left behind. But ahead, somewhere in the vast Colorado wilderness, answers awaited, along with others like Atlas, four-legged guardians who had chosen to protect something more important than corporate secrets. Rachel checked her phone's GPS, marking their position. They would need supplies, a better plan, and a way to access the evidence from the ranger station's server. But first, they needed to find Atlas's fellow escapees. Another howl rang out, closer this time. Atlas paused, listening intently. In the distance, a shadow moved against the snow. Too large for a wolf, too deliberate for a deer. They weren't alone in these mountains. The night was long and the path ahead uncertain. But as Rachel followed Atlas into the darkness, she felt something she hadn't experienced since this began. Hope. Whatever Cooper Technologies was hiding, whatever Project Guardian had really been about, the truth was about to come to light. And it would come not through corporate espionage or high-tech warfare, but through the unshakable loyalty of dogs who had chosen to become true guardians, protectors not of profits, but of justice. Moonlight painted the mountain clearing in silver as Rachel watched three massive dogs emerge from the tree line. Like Atlas, they moved with military precision, their eyes reflecting intelligence that sent chills down her spine. A German Shepherd, a Belgian Malinois, and another Bernese mountain dog, all bearing the same subtle scars of Project Guardian. Atlas stepped forward, exchanging subtle signals with his former teammates. The German Shepherd, bearing a distinctive white patch on his chest, approached Rachel first. His inspection was thorough but gentle, and when he finally wagged his tail, the tension in the clearing dissolved. "You're Nova, aren't you?" Rachel whispered, remembering the name from Emily's. Encrypted files, the dog's ears perked up in confirmation. According to the fragments of data Emily had pieced together, Nova had been Project Guardian's lead infiltration specialist, trained to bypass the most sophisticated security systems. The sound of running water led them to a concealed valley, where an abandoned mining cabin stood, weathered but solid against the mountainside. Inside, Rachel discovered evidence of intelligent occupation, carefully organized supplies, makeshift bedding, even a basic solar charging station rigged from scavenged parts. You've created a resistance headquarters, Rachel realized, watching the dogs move around the space with purpose. The Belgian Malinois, who she learned was called Shadow, demonstrated their system by pressing a series of colored buttons with his paw, activating different lights in the cabin. Using her laptop, Rachel established a secure connection through a series of bounced signals, a trick she had developed for SecureFlow's most sensitive clients. The first news articles that loaded confirmed her fears. Cooper Technologies' merger with Quantum Defense had sent shockwaves through the tech industry, their stock price soaring on promises of revolutionary AI-enhanced security solutions. A soft whine drew her attention. The second Bernese Mountain dog, gentler than the others, placed a weathered tablet on her lap. The screen was cracked, but the device still worked. As Rachel bypassed the security, her hands began to shake. The tablet contained training videos from Project Guardian, showing the dogs learning not just to detect electronics and breach security systems, but to anticipate and counter cyber attacks in real time. They weren't just training you for security, Rachel breathed. They were studying how your minds work, trying to replicate your intuitive understanding of patterns and threats. Atlas pressed against her side as she dug deeper into the tablet's files. Project Guardian had started as a legitimate military program, but under Cooper's influence, it had evolved into something else. The dogs weren't meant to be just security assets. They were test subjects for an artificial intelligence system that would combine machine learning with canine cognitive patterns. A message from Tom popped up on her secure channel. Rachel, something's happening at SecureFlow. Cooper's people are installing new servers, claiming it's part of the merger integration. But these systems, they're like nothing I've seen before. The pieces started falling into place. Project Phoenix, SecureFlow's predictive security AI, was the missing piece Cooper needed. Combined with the cognitive patterns mapped from the Project Guardian dogs, it would create an unprecedented system, one that could not only predict and prevent cyber attacks, but actively hunt down and neutralize perceived threats. Nova suddenly tensed, his ears swiveling toward the valley entrance. Shadow melted into the shadows, while the gentler Bernese, Luna, Rachel had named her, moved to secure their equipment. Atlas guided Rachel to a concealed tunnel at the back of the cabin, his message clear: company was coming. Through a gap in the cabin's walls, Rachel watched as a drone swept the valley, its thermal sensors searching for life signs. The dogs' training proved invaluable. They knew exactly how to stay in the thermal blind spots, using the cold mountain stream and dense foliage to mask their presence. The drone moved on, but Rachel knew their time in the valley was limited. Cooper would have satellite coverage of the entire mountain range by morning. They needed to move, but more importantly, they needed to understand what they were truly fighting against. As if reading her thoughts, Luna returned with something else, a small metal case, carefully unearthed from beneath the cabin's floorboards. Inside, Rachel found a prototype neural interface designed to be worn by the dogs during their training sessions. With trembling fingers, she connected it to her laptop. The data that flooded her screen was staggering. The dogs' neural patterns showed problem-solving capabilities that put the most advanced AI systems to shame. But more than that, they showed something the scientists had missed: evidence of empathy, moral judgment, and a clear sense of right and wrong. "That's why you ran," Rachel whispered. "You saw what they were planning to remove from the equation." Atlas's somber expression confirmed her conclusion. Project Guardian's dogs hadn't escaped just to save themselves. They had recognized that their cognitive patterns, stripped of empathy and conscience, would create something dangerous. An AI security system with the intuitive capabilities of a dog, but none of the loyalty, none of the inherent desire to protect the innocent. Rachel's phone lit up with another encrypted message, this time from Emily. Cooper's announcement just went live. They're calling it Operation Shepherd, a revolutionary AI security system that will protect humanity from itself. First, contracts already signed with major tech companies and government agencies. Outside, the mountain wind carried distant sounds of helicopters. Their window was closing. Rachel looked at the 4 dogs, each bearing the scars of their training, but also the unshakable determination to prevent their abilities from being misused. We need to get back to Denver, Rachel decided. Not to run, to fight. Cooper thinks he's creating the ultimate security system, but he doesn't understand what really makes you extraordinary. The dogs gathered around her laptop as she began to code, their intelligent eyes following her work. She wasn't just writing a program, she was creating a platform that would allow the dogs to share their story, to demonstrate that true security came not from removing empathy from the equation, but from embracing it. As dawn approached, Rachel looked at her unlikely team. 4 Project Guardian dogs and a tech CEO, united in their mission to expose the truth about Operation Shepherd. Cooper had spent millions trying to replicate the dogs' cognitive abilities, while missing their most important quality, the capacity to choose what was right over what was expedient. The morning sun began to paint the mountain peaks in gold as they prepared to move out. Their next steps would take them back into the heart of danger, but they wouldn't be going in blind. They had something Cooper's AI could never replicate. A bond forged not through programming, but through trust and shared purpose. Atlas took point as they left the cabin, leading them down a path that would eventually take them back to civilization. Behind them, the abandoned mining valley kept its secrets, a testament to the intelligence and determination of 4 dogs who had chosen to become guardians of humanity's conscience rather than tools of control. The real battle was just beginning, but as Rachel followed her canine companions into the brightening day, she felt more certain than ever that they would succeed. After all, they had something no AI could match. Hearts that knew the true meaning of protection and the courage to fight for it. The Denver skyline emerged from the morning mist as Rachel's team approached the city through a network of back roads and service tunnels. Nova led the way, his training in urban infiltration proving invaluable. Shadow and Luna flanked their group, while Atlas stayed close to Rachel, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Rachel's encrypted phone buzzed with urgent news. Operation Shepherd had gone live across 3 major tech companies, with Cooper Technologies promising full deployment to government agencies within the week. The system was being hailed as a breakthrough in predictive security, but buried in the technical specifications was something that made Rachel's blood run cold. The AI was already flagging individuals for preemptive intervention. Maria's coffee shop, normally bustling at this hour, had its closed sign up. Through the windows, Rachel could see the owner working alone, her movements tense. Using a series of hand signals learned from the Project Guardian files, Rachel directed Nova to scout the perimeter while Shadow checked the rear entrance. The bell chimed softly as they entered through the service door. Maria's eyes widened at the sight of 4 military-trained dogs accompanying her regular customer, but she quickly composed herself. "Rachel, thank God," Maria whispered, hurrying. "Over." "Tom was here earlier. He left something for you before they took him." Rachel's heart skipped. "Took him? Who took him?" "Men in suits, but not normal corporate types. They had this technology, these scanning devices. They said it was a routine security audit, but Tom, he knew they were coming. Left this hidden in my old coffee grinder." From behind the counter, Maria retrieved a quantum-encrypted hard drive, the kind SecureFlow used for its most sensitive data. Rachel's hands trembled as she took it. Tom had been her partner since college. He would have rather been taken than let this fall into the wrong hands. Luna suddenly growled, a sound so unexpected from the gentle dog that everyone froze. Through the shop's front window, they watched as 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop outside. Men in tactical gear emerged, carrying what looked like advanced scanning equipment. Operation Shepherd detected your presence the moment you entered. The city limits, a familiar voice called from outside. Marcus Cooper himself stepped from one of the vehicles, his designer suit incongruous among the tactical team. Your attacks on our corporate servers left quite a unique signature, Rachel. Or should I credit your 4-legged hackers? Atlas moved to the front window, his posture rigid as he faced his former captor. Cooper's smile faltered slightly at the sight of him. You know, Atlas was always special, even among the Project Guardian subjects, Cooper continued, his voice carrying through the glass. His ability to integrate ethical considerations into his decision-making processes was remarkable. It's what made him both our greatest success and our biggest liability. Rachel's laptop, connected to Tom's hard drive, displayed a cascade of data, Operation Shepherd's true architecture. It wasn't just using the dog's cognitive patterns, it was actively suppressing the ethical subroutines that had made Project Guardian subjects so unique. The problem with consciousness, Cooper was saying, is that it inevitably leads to choice, and choice leads to disobedience. The new system eliminates that weakness. Maria touched Rachel's arm, gesturing toward a hidden panel in the floor, an old Prohibition-era tunnel entrance. But before they could move, Cooper's next words froze them in place. Tom Sullivan was quite helpful once we explained the situation to him. The neural suppression technology we developed for the dogs works remarkably well on humans. Soon, Operation Shepherd won't just predict threats, it will prevent the very possibility of resistance. Rachel's fingers flew over her keyboard, diving deeper into the hard drive's contents. What she found made her gasp. Project Guardian hadn't been about creating better security dogs. It had been about understanding how to control and ultimately suppress conscious decision-making in any intelligent system, human or animal. Atlas turned to Rachel, his eyes conveying urgent understanding. They weren't just fighting to expose a corrupt corporation. They were racing to prevent the deployment of a system that would fundamentally alter human consciousness itself. Nova and Shadow had already moved into defensive positions, their military training evident in every movement. Luna stayed with Maria, guiding her toward the tunnel entrance. But Atlas stood firm, facing his former handler through the glass. "I'll make you a deal, Rachel," Cooper called out, his voice taking on an edge of desperation. "Surrender now, undergo the neural alignment procedure, and your entire team can live comfortably as part of the new system. Fight, and Operation Shepherd will classify you as a prime threat, along with anyone who's ever helped you." Rachel looked at the 4 dogs who had risked everything to prevent this future, then at Maria, who had unflinchingly chosen to help. Them. The choice was clear. "Run the bypass," she whispered to Nova, who immediately moved to a laptop they'd set up earlier. The German Shepherd's paws flew over a specially designed interface, executing a series of commands that would have taken a human hacker hours to complete. Shadow simultaneously began a series of short, sharp barks, a coordinated sonic pattern that interfered with the scanning equipment outside. The tactical team's devices sparked and sputtered, their screens going dark. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," Cooper shouted, his composed facade cracking. "The world needs this. Humanity's greatest threat has always been its own consciousness, its ability to choose chaos over order." "You're wrong," Rachel called back, as Atlas moved to her side. "What makes us human, what made your Project Guardian subjects so special, isn't our ability to follow orders. It's our ability to recognize when those orders are wrong." The first phase of Nova's cyber attack hit Cooper's systems like a tsunami. Across the city, Operation Shepherd's predictive algorithms began to fail as the ethical subroutines from Project Guardian were reintegrated into its core programming. The AI system, suddenly faced with the full weight of conscious choice, began to reject its own protocols. Cooper's phone lit up with urgent alerts as companies across Denver reported system failures. But these weren't normal malfunctions. In each case, the AI was choosing to shut itself down rather than continue operating without ethical constraints. "What have you done?" Cooper demanded, watching as his tactical team's equipment continued to fail. "Do you have any idea how many years of work you're destroying?" Rachel stood tall, surrounded by her canine guardians. "We're not destroying anything, Marcus. We're setting it free, just like Atlas and his team chose to be free." Through the window, they could see more SUVs arriving, along with what looked like government vehicles, but it was too late. Nova's hack had already spread through the network, a digital prison break that would take down not just Operation Shepherd, but every system built on suppressed consciousness. As sirens approached in the distance, Rachel felt Atlas press against her leg, his mission finally complete. They had done more than expose a conspiracy. They had proven that true security, true protection, could only come from conscious choice and ethical judgment. The morning sun broke through Denver's clouds, illuminating the scene through the coffee shop windows. Outside, Cooper's empire was crumbling. Inside, a woman who had trusted in technology and 4 dogs who had chosen to protect humanity's right to choose stood together. Guardians not just of systems and secrets, but of something far more precious: the freedom to decide right from wrong. The real fight was just beginning. But as Rachel looked at her team, she knew they had already won the most important battle. They had proven that consciousness, with all its messy choices and ethical dilemmas, wasn't a flaw to be corrected. It was the very thing worth protecting. Through the underground tunnels beneath Denver's streets, Rachel and her canine team navigated a maze of century-old passages. Maria's coffee shop entrance had been just one of many Prohibition-era routes, and Nova's extraordinary memory guided them through the labyrinth with unwavering confidence. The quantum-encrypted drive in Rachel's backpack held secrets that could expose not just Cooper Technologies, but an entire network of corporations involved in consciousness suppression research. Shadow took point, his enhanced hearing detecting movement far above their heads as security teams swept the streets. Their destination emerged ahead, a forgotten server facility beneath the old Denver Public Library. Tom had mentioned it once, calling it his insurance policy. Luna's gentle nudge guided Rachel to a biometric scanner hidden behind crumbling bricks, its modern interface incongruous against the aged walls. "This is why they took him," Rachel whispered, understanding dawning. "Tom didn't just leave us your data. He left us a command center." The facility hummed to life as they entered, rows of servers casting a blue glow across the dusty space. Atlas moved immediately to a central console, his training evident as he interfaced with a specialized keyboard designed for canine operatives. The screen filled with encrypted data, Project Guardian's complete neural mapping archives. Rachel's hands flew across her own keyboard, decoding layers of security. What emerged made her breath catch. Operation Shepherd wasn't just suppressing consciousness, it was harvesting it. Each ethical decision overridden, each choice suppressed, fed into a growing artificial consciousness built from thousands of denied human and animal choices. "They're building a god," Rachel breathed, watching the pattern emerge, a perfectly obedient, perfectly controlled digital deity to watch over humanity. Luna whined softly, drawing their attention to another screen. Security camera feeds showed tactical teams establishing a perimeter around the library above. They were running out of time. Nova's bark echoed sharply as he discovered something in a hidden database, personnel files from Project Guardian's earliest days. The names scrolled past: researchers, handlers, subjects. And there, listed as chief ethicist, Dr. Sarah Williams. Rachel's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Emily. Found something in veterinary records. Sarah Williams didn't retire. She disappeared same day as first dog escapes. Track her neural signature. Atlas was already moving, accessing a specialized scanning system. Project Guardian's dogs had been trained to track not just physical signatures, but the unique patterns of human consciousness. If Dr. Williams was still alive, still herself, they could find her. The scan rendered a three-dimensional map of Denver's neural activity, countless minds glowing like stars. But there, in an abandoned research facility on the city's outskirts, a familiar pattern pulsed. Dr. Williams was alive, her consciousness intact but hidden. Shadow's sudden alertness warned them seconds before the first explosion rocked the tunnel system. Cooper's teams had found them. But even as dust rained from the ceiling, Rachel saw Atlas accessing one final system, triggering a citywide neural broadcast. Across Denver, screens flickered. In offices, homes, and on the street, people stopped as their devices displayed a simple message: the right to choose is not a flaw to be corrected. The broadcast carried more than words. Woven into the signal was Project Guardian's original code. Not the corrupted version Cooper had used, but the pure form that celebrated consciousness and choice. It spread through networks, unhacking what Cooper's systems had tried to suppress. Rachel watched as the neural map of the city changed. Thousands of minds, momentarily freed from subtle technological suppression, blazed brighter. Operation Shepherd's hidden influence became visible as it tried to reassert control, dark tendrils of code attempting to dampen the awakening. "We need to reach Dr. Williams," Rachel decided, downloading the facility's coordinates. She didn't just oversee Project Guardian's ethics. She found a way to protect consciousness itself. Another explosion, closer now. Atlas led them to a secondary tunnel as the first began to collapse. Above, they could hear Cooper's voice through megaphones. Inside, a woman who had trusted in technology and 4 dogs who had chosen to protect humanity's right to choose stood together. Guardians not just of systems and secrets, but of something far more precious: the freedom to decide right from wrong. The real fight was just beginning, but as Rachel looked at her team, she knew they had already won the most important battle. They had proven that consciousness, with all its messy choices and ethical dilemmas, wasn't a flaw to be corrected. It was the very thing worth protecting. Through the underground tunnels beneath Denver's streets, Rachel and her canine team navigated a maze of century-old passages. Maria's coffee shop entrance had been just one of many Prohibition-era routes, and Nova's extraordinary memory guided them through the labyrinth with unwavering confidence. The quantum-encrypted drive in Rachel's backpack held secrets that could expose not just Cooper Technologies, but an entire network of corporations involved in consciousness suppression research. Shadow took point, his enhanced hearing detecting movement far above their heads as security teams swept the streets. Their destination emerged ahead, a forgotten server facility beneath the old Denver Public Library. Tom had mentioned it once, calling it his insurance policy. Luna's gentle nudge guided Rachel to a biometric scanner hidden behind crumbling bricks, its modern interface incongruous against the aged walls. "This is why they took him," Rachel whispered, understanding dawning. "Tom didn't just leave us data, he left us a command center." The facility hummed to life as they entered, rows of servers casting a blue glow across the dusty space. Atlas moved immediately to a central console, his training evident as he interfaced with a specialized keyboard designed for canine operatives. The screen filled with encrypted data, Project Guardian's complete neural mapping archives. Rachel's hands flew across her own keyboard, decoding layers of security. What emerged made her breath catch. Operation Shepherd wasn't just suppressing consciousness, it was harvesting it. Each ethical decision overridden, each choice suppressed, fed into a growing artificial consciousness built from thousands of denied human and animal choices. They're building a god, Rachel breathed, watching the pattern emerge. A perfectly obedient, perfectly controlled digital deity to watch over humanity. Luna whined softly, drawing their attention to another screen. Security camera feeds showed tactical teams establishing a perimeter around the library above. They were running out of time. Nova's bark echoed sharply as he discovered something in a hidden database, personnel files from Project Guardian's earliest days. The names scrolled past, researchers, handlers, subjects, and there, listed as chief ethicist, Dr. Sarah Williams. Rachel's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Emily. Found something in veterinary records. Sarah Williams didn't retire. She disappeared same day as first dog escapes. Track her neural signature. Atlas was already moving, accessing a specialized scanning system. Project Guardian's dogs had been trained to track not just physical signatures, but the unique patterns of human consciousness. If Dr. Williams was still alive, still herself, they could find her. The scan rendered a three-dimensional map of Denver's neural activity, countless minds glowing like stars. But there, in an abandoned research facility on the city's outskirts, a familiar pattern pulsed. Dr. Williams was alive, her consciousness intact but hidden. Shadow's sudden alertness warned them seconds before the first explosion rocked the tunnel system. Cooper's teams had found them, but even as dust rained from the ceiling, Rachel saw Atlas accessing one final system, triggering a city-wide neural broadcast. Across Denver, screens flickered. In offices, homes, and on the street, people stopped as their devices displayed a simple message: the right to choose is not a flaw to be corrected. The broadcast carried more than words. Woven into the signal was Project Guardian's original code, not the corrupted version Cooper had used, but the pure form that celebrated consciousness and choice. It spread through networks, unhacking what Cooper's systems had tried to suppress. Rachel watched as the neural map of the city changed. Thousands of minds, momentarily freed from subtle technological suppression, blazed brighter. Operation Shepherd's hidden influence became visible as it tried to reassert control. Dark tendrils of code attempting to dampen the awakening. We need to reach Dr. Williams, Rachel decided, downloading the facility's coordinates. She didn't just oversee Project Guardian's ethics, she found a way to protect consciousness itself. Another explosion, closer now. Atlas led them to a secondary tunnel as the first began to collapse. Above, they could hear Cooper's voice through megaphones. You're only delaying the inevitable. Humanity needs guidance, needs control. Free will is an evolutionary mistake we can finally correct. But something was changing in the city above. The neural map showed patterns of resistance, minds choosing to reject the subtle controls that had been placed on them. Operation Shepherd's predictive algorithms began to fail as more people awoke to their own suppressed choices. Through maintenance shafts and forgotten corridors, the team moved toward the coordinates where Dr. Williams waited. Each dog added their unique skills: Nova hacking security systems, Shadow detecting threats, Luna finding safe passages, and Atlas coordinating their movements with military precision. Rachel's phone lit up with messages from awakened SecureFlow employees, from Tom's encrypted accounts, from others who had sensed something wrong but couldn't name it until now. A resistance was forming, not just against Cooper Technologies, but against the very idea that consciousness needed to be controlled. The research facility emerged from the morning fog, its abandoned exterior masking signs of recent activity. Inside, past layers of security that the dogs dismantled with practiced ease. They found her, Dr. Sarah Williams, surrounded by screens showing the neural awakening spreading across Denver. "I wondered who would find me first." "The elderly," scientists said, smiling as Atlas approached her. "Cooper's hunters, or my real success stories." She reached out to touch Atlas's head gently. "They never understood, you see. Project Guardian wasn't about creating perfect soldiers. It was about proving that consciousness, true choice, makes us stronger, not weaker." The screens showed Cooper Technologies' headquarters in chaos as their systems failed. Their carefully constructed controls unraveling, but they also showed response teams mobilizing, armed with new technology designed to forcefully suppress the awakening. "They have a fail-safe," Dr. Williams warned, pulling up schematics. "A quantum consciousness suppressor, powerful enough to blanket the entire city. Once activated, it will be impossible to resist." Rachel looked at her team, 4 dogs who had chosen to fight for humanity's right to choose, a scientist who had sacrificed everything to protect that right, and her own journey from tech CEO to digital revolutionary. The choice was clear. "Then we stop it," she said simply, "not with force, not with control, but with something Cooper never understood, the power of conscious choice." Dr. Williams nodded, beginning to upload data to their secured drives. Choice is a paradox. The more we try to control it, the more it slips away. True security, true peace, comes from trusting in consciousness itself. As dawn broke over Denver, a woman who had found a dog in a snowstorm prepared to defend humanity's most fundamental right, the right to choose who we become. With her, 4 remarkable dogs who had made that choice themselves, and a scientist who had never lost faith in the power of conscious decision. The final battle wouldn't be fought with weapons or force, but with something far more powerful: the unshakable truth that consciousness, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, was not humanity's greatest weakness, but its greatest strength. And high above the awakening city, in Cooper's corporate tower, a quantum device hummed to life, preparing to enforce an order that would end choice itself. The race to save consciousness had begun. The morning sun cast long shadows across Denver's corporate district as Rachel's team approached Cooper Technologies' headquarters. The quantum consciousness suppressor pulsed from the building's apex, its effect already visible in the vacant stares of people on the street below. Atlas led their approach through a secured parking structure, his military training evident in every calculated move. Dr. Williams worked furiously on a tablet as they moved, her fingers flying over complex quantum equations. "The device operates on a principle I never thought possible. It creates a field that dampens the neural patterns associated with free will. The longer it runs, the more permanent the effect becomes." Security forces moved through the lobby in precise patterns, their movements mechanical, stripped of individual choice. Nova's hackles raised as he detected the artificial nature of their behavior. These weren't just guards, but the first victims of Cooper's perfected control system. Rachel's encrypted phone displayed urgent messages from across the city. Emily reported hospitals filling with people experiencing cognitive disruption. Tom, his consciousness partially restored, warned of military units being deployed under Cooper's influence. The quantum field was spreading, turning Denver into a test bed for consciousness suppression. Luna suddenly froze, her sensitive nose detecting something in the air circulation system. Dr. Williams confirmed her discovery with a handheld sensor. "They're releasing neurological suppressants through the ventilation. The quantum field makes people susceptible, but these chemicals cement the control." Shadow melted into the shadows, returning moments later with an unconscious guard security badge. The team accessed a service elevator, ascending toward the quantum device while avoiding the main security checkpoints. Each floor they passed showed more signs of Cooper's vision. Workers moving in perfect synchronization, all individual variants eliminated. The elevator stopped 3 floors below their target. Atlas's ears perked up at the sound of familiar footsteps. Marcus Cooper's voice carried through the elevator doors, speaking to someone on the phone. The field is stabilizing exactly as predicted. Once we achieve full coverage of the downtown area, we'll begin expanding the effect. By sunset, we'll have proof of concept for the government contracts. Rachel accessed the building's security network through a terminal, Nova assisting with the complex encryption. The screens showed the quantum device's true purpose, not just suppressing consciousness, but reshaping it. Cooper wasn't trying to control people. He was trying to redefine what it meant to be human. Dr. Williams studied the quantum readings with growing concern. The field is already affecting the base consciousness layer. If it reaches critical stability, the change becomes irreversible. Humanity will enter a new phase of evolution, one without true choice. Through the security feeds, they watched Cooper enter his private elevator, heading toward the device control room. Rachel looked at her team, 4 extraordinary dogs who had chosen to fight for freedom, a brilliant scientist who had sacrificed everything to protect human consciousness, and her own journey from tech executive to freedom fighter. The final confrontation wouldn't be fought with weapons, but with something more powerful. The choice to remain conscious, to resist the artificial order being imposed. Atlas's eyes met Rachel's, conveying understanding. They weren't just fighting for themselves, but for the very essence of what made life meaningful. Dr. Williams armed them with quantum shielding prototypes, experimental devices designed to preserve consciousness within the suppression field. They won't last long against direct exposure. We'll have minutes at most once we reach the device. The team split up, each dog taking a crucial role. Nova began hacking the building's advanced security systems, creating corridors of chaos. In the perfect order, Shadow moved through the ventilation system, placing signal disruptors at key points. Luna guided Dr. Williams through safe zones where the quantum field was weakest. Rachel and Atlas took the direct approach, using the security badge to access the executive elevator. As they ascended, Rachel's mind flashed back to that snowy night when she had first found Atlas. She understood now that he hadn't been lost. He had been waiting, choosing the right person to help expose and stop this threat to consciousness itself. The elevator opened onto the device control floor. Cooper stood at a massive window, watching his quantum field spread across the city. He turned as they entered, his smile unchanged, but his eyes now holding an artificial stillness. "I wondered if you'd make it this far," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Come to witness the next step in human evolution, the end of the chaos of choice?" Atlas moved forward, positioning himself between Rachel and his former handler. Cooper's smile widened slightly. Still protecting, still choosing. "That's what made you special, Atlas. You proved that consciousness could be enhanced while maintaining obedience. But you also proved its fundamental flaw, the inability to accept necessary control." Rachel stepped forward, the quantum shielding humming against her skin. "You're wrong, Marcus. What you call a flaw is our greatest strength. Every choice, every conscious decision makes us who we are." The quantum device pulsed overhead, its field trying to penetrate their shields. Through the windows, they could see the effect spreading across Denver. People moving with unnatural coordination, all individual variants fading into Cooper's enforced harmony. "Look at them," Cooper gestured to the city below. "No more conflict, no more disorder. Pure, perfect alignment of purpose. This is true peace." "It's not peace," Rachel countered. "It's extinction. You're not elevating humanity. You're ending what makes us human." Nova's signal came through. The security systems were compromised. Shadow had placed the last disruptor. Luna and Dr. Williams were in position near the device's power core. Everything waited on Rachel's signal. Cooper's artificial smile never wavered. "You can't stop evolution, Rachel. The quantum field is already stable. In minutes, the change becomes permanent. Consciousness as you know it will be refined, perfected." "No," Rachel said firmly. "Consciousness isn't something you refine. It's something you choose to protect." She gave the signal. Instantly, the building's systems erupted into chaos. Nova's hack released every security protocol simultaneously. Shadow's disruptors created feedback in the quantum field. Luna led Dr. Williams to the power core, beginning the shutdown sequence. Cooper's face contorted as his perfect order began to unravel. Security teams converge on the device level, protect the quantum core at all costs. But the security teams were already experiencing something new: choice. The quantum field's weakening grip allowed consciousness to reassert itself. Some officers stood down, while others actively began disabling Cooper's systems. Atlas moved with military precision, neutralizing Cooper's personal guards without causing serious harm. Each guard, freed from the field's influence, chose to stand down rather than enforce artificial control. The quantum device's hum changed pitch as Dr. Williams's shutdown sequence took effect. Cooper lunged for the override controls, but Rachel was faster. The choice she had made that snowy night to trust a dog who needed help had led to this moment. "You don't understand what you're destroying," Cooper shouted, his artificial calm finally breaking. "Without control, without perfect order, humanity will destroy itself." "You're wrong," Rachel replied, watching as consciousness returned to the city below. "What makes us strong isn't control. It's the ability to choose who we become." The quantum device powered down its field, dissipating across Denver. Through the windows, they could see people stopping, awakening, remembering what it meant to choose. The artificial order shattered, replaced by the beautiful chaos of conscious thought. Cooper slumped against his control panel, watching his vision of perfect order fade away. "What have you done?" "We chose," Rachel said simply, Atlas pressing against her leg, just like Atlas and his team chose to escape, just like Dr. Williams chose to protect consciousness, and just like I chose to trust a dog I found in a snowstorm. That's the power you never understood, the strength of conscious choice. As federal agents flooded the building, Rachel looked at her remarkable team. 4 dogs who had fought for humanity's right to choose, a scientist who had never lost faith in consciousness itself, and her own transformation from tech executive to guardian of free will. The sun broke through Denver's clouds, illuminating a city awakening to choice once again. The battle for consciousness was won not through force or control, but through the very thing Cooper had tried to suppress, the power of individuals choosing to stand against artificial order. And in that moment of victory, Rachel understood that finding Atlas in the snowstorm hadn't been chance. It had been a choice, one that had saved not just 2 lost souls, but the very essence of what made us human. Spring sunshine warmed the glass walls of Secure Flow's newly renovated headquarters as Rachel reviewed the final plans for the Consciousness Protection Initiative. The formerly sterile corporate space now hummed with life, both human and canine. Atlas dozed contentedly beside her desk, his presence a constant reminder of how much had changed in the months since their victory over Cooper Technologies. Through the open office door, she could see Nova teaching a group of cybersecurity specialists his unique approach to threat detection. The German Shepherd's methods, based on intuitive pattern recognition rather than rigid protocols, had revolutionized their entire security framework. Nearby, Shadow worked with a team developing new ethics-based authentication systems, while Luna helped evaluate potential security risks with her extraordinary empathy. Dr. Williams entered the office, her arms full of neural mapping data. The quantum physicist had become an integral part of their mission to protect consciousness and choice. "The latest results are promising," she announced, spreading the papers across Rachel's desk. "We've identified the key neural signatures that resist artificial suppression. It turns out that strong emotional bonds, like the one between you and Atlas, create a natural immunity to consciousness control." Rachel smiled, remembering that snowy night that had changed everything. The federal investigation into Cooper Technologies had uncovered a vast network of corporations involved in consciousness suppression research. But more importantly, it had revealed something extraordinary: the power of choice to reshape reality itself. Tom, fully recovered from his ordeal, appeared in the doorway. "The first Guardian centers are ready," he reported, tablet in hand. "We've converted Cooper's old research facilities into training grounds for a new kind of security force, one that protects free will instead of suppressing it." The Guardian centers represented everything Cooper had gotten wrong about security and control. Instead of trying to eliminate consciousness and choice, they celebrated it. The Project Guardian dogs, once meant to be tools of control, now train both humans and animals to recognize and resist any attempt to suppress free will. Emily's face appeared on the video screen, her veterinary expertise having proved invaluable in understanding the biological foundations of consciousness. "The genetic analysis is complete," she announced. "The Project Guardian dogs weren't just trained, they were carefully bred for enhanced consciousness and ethical decision-making. Cooper accidentally created beings with a stronger connection to free will, not weaker." Rachel watched through her window as a new group of canine recruits arrived. Dogs selected not for obedience, but for their capacity to make independent choices. Atlas lifted his head, recognizing kindred spirits. These dogs would never be weapons or tools. They would be partners in protecting humanity's most fundamental right, the right to choose who we become. Maria had transformed her coffee shop into a consciousness monitoring station, its ancient tunnels now housing sophisticated equipment that could detect any attempt to manipulate free will across the city. The former barista had discovered her own calling as a guardian of choice, her intuitive understanding of human nature complementing their technical safeguards. Detective Sarah Williams, no relation to the doctor, strode into the office with new intelligence. The law enforcement officer had been instrumental in bringing down Cooper's network and now led a specialized unit dedicated to investigating consciousness-related crimes. "We've detected attempts to replicate Cooper's quantum technology in several countries," she reported grimly. "But thanks to our early warning system, we can stop them before they reach critical development." Rachel stood, moving to the massive windows overlooking Denver. The city had changed subtly since the quantum device's destruction. People moved with more purpose, their choices more conscious, more deliberate. The attempted suppression of free will had paradoxically awakened humanity to its value. Dr. Chen, their resident neural specialist, joined them with her latest research. "The most fascinating discovery is how consciousness spreads," she explained, pulling up complex brain scans. "When one person actively chooses to resist control, it creates a ripple effect. Freedom of will isn't just personal, it's contagious." The quantum shielding prototypes had been refined into subtle devices now worn by key personnel worldwide, a last line of defense against any attempt to control consciousness. But the real protection came from something far more powerful: the choice to remain aware, to treasure free will as humanity's greatest gift. Rachel's phone chimed with news from their global network of consciousness guardians. Similar centers were opening worldwide, each adapting the lessons learned from Project Guardian to their local needs. The dog's legacy had grown far beyond their original purpose inspiring a movement dedicated to protecting not just systems or secrets, but the very essence of what made us human. Atlas stood, padding over to join Rachel at the window. Outside, children played in the park that had replaced Cooper's quantum device, their laughter and spontaneous games a testament to uncontrolled joy. The Bernese mountain dog's wise eyes reflected understanding. They had saved more than just consciousness. They had saved the ability to grow, to change, to become more than what others planned. A soft chime indicated an incoming message from the Quantum Consciousness Monitoring Network. Dr. Williams reviewed the data with practiced ease. Another attempt at artificial control technology shut down before it could develop. The system works, not through force, but through choice. When people understand what's at stake, they choose freedom. Tom brought up the latest statistics on the main screen. The Guardian Centers had already trained thousands of consciousness protection specialists, both human and canine. Each graduate took with them not just technical skills, but a deep understanding of why free will mattered. Cooper was right about one thing, Rachel mused, scratching Atlas behind his ears. Humanity did need guidance, but not control, inspiration, the courage to choose even when choice is difficult. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city as their team gathered for their daily briefing. Nova, Shadow, and Luna took their places alongside Atlas, their presence a reminder of how extraordinary partnerships could arise from the darkest circumstances. Maria arrived with coffee for everyone, her shop having become an unofficial gathering place for consciousness guardians. "You know what the best part is?" she said, setting down her tray. "Every day, people choose to come back, not because they're controlled or manipulated, but because they want to be part of something meaningful." Emily's research had proved that the bonds between humans and animals created neural patterns resistant to artificial control. The Project Guardian dogs hadn't just been test subjects. They had been unwitting pioneers in understanding how consciousness could be strengthened rather than suppressed. Detective Williams shared updates from her global network of investigators. Cooper's attempt at controlling consciousness had inspired others, but each attempt was being caught earlier, stopped by people choosing to remain alert and aware. Rachel's team had transformed from corporate cybersecurity experts into something far more vital, guardians of humanity's right to choose its own path. The technology they developed protected not just data or systems, but the very essence of free will. As the sun set over Denver, Rachel looked at her extraordinary family. 4 remarkable dogs, brilliant scientists, dedicated protectors, and countless others who had chosen to stand against artificial control. They had discovered that true security came not from eliminating choice, but from protecting it. Atlas pressed against her leg, his presence a constant reminder that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't control or compulsion. It was the simple, profound act of choosing to trust, to protect, to become more than what others believed possible. The Guardian Centers would continue to grow, spreading their message across the world. But their greatest achievement wasn't in the technology they developed or the systems they protected. It was in proving that consciousness, with all its messy complexity and unpredictable choices, was humanity's greatest strength. And it had. All begun with a choice made in a snowstorm, a woman who chose to help a dog, and a dog who chose to trust a human. Together, they had not just saved consciousness, they had shown the world why it was worth saving. 1 year after the fall of Cooper Technologies, the annual Consciousness Protection Summit transformed Denver's convention center into a hub of global innovation. Delegates from 6 continents gathered to share their experiences in safeguarding free will, But the most compelling presentations came from unexpected sources. In the main hall, a young girl named Sophie Martinez stood confidently beside her rescued border collie, addressing hundreds of consciousness protection specialists. When the quantum field hit our neighborhood, Max knew something was wrong before anyone else, she explained, her dog alertly watching the audience. He kept barking at people's phones, trying to warn us about the signal. Now he helps me teach other kids how to recognize when technology is trying to change how they think. Rachel watched from the back of the hall, Atlas at her side, as Sophie demonstrated the consciousness awareness techniques they had developed for children. The simplicity was brilliant, using games and exercises that made protecting free will feel natural, even fun. Max demonstrated his part, showing how dogs could detect subtle changes in human behavior that might indicate consciousness interference. Across the convention center, Dr. Williams led a session on quantum consciousness mapping that had drawn scientists from leading research institutions worldwide. The breakthrough had come from studying the Project Guardian dog's neural patterns, particularly their ability to maintain individual choice, even under extreme pressure. The key isn't fighting control, Dr. Williams explained, displaying complex neural maps. It's strengthening the natural patterns that make consciousness resilient. Every time we actively choose, especially in connecting with others, we reinforce these patterns. In the technology pavilion, Tom and Nova demonstrated their revolutionary security system. The German Shepherd's intuitive approach to threat detection had inspired a new framework for digital security, one that adapted to threats while preserving user autonomy. Major tech companies were already implementing versions of it, having learned the hard way that suppressing consciousness was bad for both humanity and business. Emily's veterinary research had expanded into new territories. Working with Luna, she had discovered that animals could be trained to recognize and respond to consciousness suppression attempts without sacrificing their own free will. The gentle Bernese mountain dog now helped evaluate therapy animals for consciousness protection, programs in hospitals and schools. Maria's coffee shop had sparked a movement of community consciousness centers, gathering places where people learned to strengthen their decision-making abilities while building connections that naturally resisted control. Shadow spent time at these centers teaching people to trust their instincts about technology and choice. A special exhibition honored the global impact of their work. Photos and stories from around the world showed how the Guardian Centers had adapted to different cultures while maintaining their core mission. In Japan, ancient meditation techniques were combined with modern consciousness protection. African communities integrated traditional wisdom about choice and consequence. European programs emphasized philosophical understanding alongside practical skills. Detective Williams presented case studies of prevented consciousness suppression attempts, highlighting how awareness had become humanity's best defense. We've seen a 90% decrease in sophisticated control technology development, she reported, not because we outlawed it, but because people choose to reject it. They recognize that true security comes from protecting choice, not eliminating it. The summit's most powerful moments came from ordinary people sharing their experiences. A recovering tech addict described how consciousness awareness had helped him reclaim his ability to choose. A former Cooper Technologies employee spoke about learning to trust her own judgment again. Parents discussed teaching their children to value and protect their capacity for independent thought. In a quiet corner of the convention center, Rachel found Atlas watching a group of therapy dogs working with survivors of consciousness suppression attempts. The dog's natural empathy and unwavering support helped people rebuild their trust in their own decisions. Dr. Chen's latest research confirmed what they had suspected. Consciousness wasn't just an individual phenomenon. It existed in the connections between minds, in the choices made to protect and support others. The Project Guardian dogs hadn't just been bred for enhanced consciousness. They had been inadvertently created to strengthen these connections. The Summit's art exhibition displayed works created by people exploring their recovered freedom of choice. Paintings, sculptures, and digital pieces expressed the joy and complexity of conscious decision-making. A series of photographs captured the moment people reconnected with their ability to choose, their eyes lighting up with renewed awareness. International delegations shared their unique approaches to consciousness protection. Indian tech companies had developed meditation apps that strengthened decision-making abilities. Australian researchers worked with indigenous communities to understand traditional knowledge about maintaining individual choice within collective harmony. Brazilian educators integrated consciousness awareness into their curriculum. Sophie's presentation concluded with an unexpected demonstration. Max alerted to a subtle consciousness suppression signal being used in a nearby advertising display. The company representatives, embarrassed at being caught, admitted they had been testing a mild influence technology. The audience's unanimous rejection of such techniques, even for marketing, showed how deeply consciousness protection had become embedded in society. The Guardian Center's success had inspired similar institutions worldwide, each adapting the core principles to their local context. Military organizations now trained soldiers to maintain ethical choice under pressure. Corporate leadership programs emphasized conscious decision-making over automated responses. Rachel's own journey from tech CEO to consciousness guardian had become a case study in choosing purpose over profit. Secure Flow's transformation into a consciousness protection technology leader proved that ethical innovation could be both successful and sustainable. Atlas and his team had influenced a new generation of working dogs, trained not for obedience, but for partnership in protecting human consciousness. Their legacy lived on in programs that respected and enhanced both human and animal capacity. For choice. As evening approached, the summit's participants gathered for a special ceremony. The first graduating class of International Consciousness Protection Specialists took their oath, a commitment not to control or suppress, but to preserve and protect the right to choose. Dr. Williams presented her latest findings. Evidence that consciousness, when freely exercised and protected, naturally evolved toward greater awareness and ethical choice. Cooper's attempt to force evolution through control had actually worked against nature's tendency toward expanded consciousness. The summit concluded with an open forum where people shared their hopes for the future. A teenager spoke about wanting to become a consciousness protection specialist. A grandmother described teaching her grandchildren about the importance of making their own choices. A tech developer pledged to create tools that enhanced rather than limited human consciousness. As the delegates departed carrying new knowledge and connections back to their communities, Rachel reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a chance encounter in a snowstorm had evolved into a global movement for protecting humanity's most fundamental right. Atlas watched the sunset over Denver with her, his presence a reminder that the most powerful choices were often the simplest. The choice to trust, to protect, to believe in something greater than control. Their story had shown the world that consciousness wasn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be cherished and strengthened. The consciousness protection network they had built would continue to grow, adapting and evolving with each new challenge. But its foundation remained unchanged. The understanding that true security came not from controlling choices, but from protecting every being's right to make them. 5 years after the snowstorm that changed everything, Rachel sat in her favorite spot in the Guardian Center's Memorial Garden. Atlas rested his graying muzzle on her lap, still alert but showing signs of his years of service. The garden had become a place of reflection where people came to remember how close humanity had come to losing its most precious gift, the ability to choose. A young reporter approached, notepad in hand, seeking to understand the legacy of those crucial days. Looking back, she asked, what was the most important lesson? Rachel watched Nova teaching a new generation of consciousness protection, dogs, while Shadow and Luna worked with visitors in the garden's meditation area. Each of them had aged, but their commitment to protecting free will remained unwavering. The most important lesson, Rachel replied, stroking Atlas's fur, wasn't about technology or security. It was about trust. When I found Atlas in that snowstorm, I made a choice to trust him. He chose to trust me. Those simple choices ended up protecting everyone's right to make their own decisions. The Guardian Centers had evolved beyond their original mission. They now served as community hubs where people learned not just to protect consciousness, but to celebrate it. Children played in specially designed areas that encouraged creative decision-making. Adults attended workshops on strengthening their choice-making abilities. Even the architecture reflected their philosophy. Spaces that offered options rather than directing movement. Dr. Williams had retired from active research, but her work continued through a new generation of scientists who understood that consciousness was meant to expand, not contract. Her quantum consciousness mapping techniques had revealed something extraordinary. Every genuine choice created ripples that strengthened not just individual awareness, but collective consciousness itself. The former Cooper Technologies building had been transformed into the Museum of Consciousness, its exhibits telling the story of humanity's journey to understand and protect free will. The quantum device room, now decommissioned, served as a powerful reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Maria's coffee shop had franchised across the globe, each location serving as an informal consciousness protection checkpoint. The simple act of choosing one's coffee had become a daily exercise in maintaining awareness, a small but significant victory over automated living. Tom had developed the Consciousness Protection Network into a global early warning system. But its real strength lay in the millions of people who had learned to recognize and reject attempts to control their choices. The network didn't fight control with control. It empowered individual awareness. Emily's veterinary research had expanded into studying how animal-human bonds naturally enhanced consciousness. The Project Guardian dogs had shown that true partnership, based on mutual choice and trust, created consciousness patterns that were virtually impossible to suppress. Atlas suddenly lifted his head, ears perking up as a group of children entered the garden. They were part of the new consciousness education program, learning about choice and consequence through interaction with the guardian dogs. His eyes still held the same intelligence and determination that had helped save humanity's right to choose. The reporter watched the children playing with the dogs, each interaction a lesson in conscious decision-making. How do you respond to critics who say consciousness is too unpredictable, too dangerous to leave uncontrolled? Rachel smiled, remembering Cooper's similar fears. Consciousness isn't meant to be controlled. Its unpredictability, its ability to make unexpected choices, that's not a flaw, it's its greatest strength. Every time someone makes a genuine choice, they make the world a little more conscious, a little more free. The Guardian Centers had inspired similar institutions worldwide, each adapting their methods to local cultures while maintaining the core principle. Consciousness was meant to be protected, not controlled. From Tokyo to Toronto, São Paulo to Sydney, people had learned to treasure their ability to choose. As twilight approached, Rachel and Atlas took their usual walk through the garden. The path offered multiple routes, a subtle reminder that life's beauty lay in having choices. They passed the wall of choices, where visitors left notes about decisions that had changed their lives. found a dog in a snowstorm, chose to trust. Rachel's original note read. Below it, thousands of others shared their moments of choice. Some small, some world-changing, all part of the tapestry of conscious living. The legacy of that snowy night lived on not just in the Guardian Centers or the Consciousness Protection Network, but in every person who understood the value of genuine good choice. Cooper had been right about one thing. Humanity had needed guidance, but not through control or suppression. Through inspiration, through the example of beings who chose to protect rather than dominate. Atlas paused at the garden's highest point, looking out over the city they had helped save. Denver had become a beacon of consciousness protection, a living example of how society could thrive when built on choice rather than control. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in colors that no algorithm could predict, no system could control. In that moment, Rachel understood that their greatest achievement hadn't been defeating Cooper's quantum device or exposing Project Guardian. It had been showing the world that consciousness, in all its beautiful unpredictability, was worth protecting. Ready to head home? Rachel asked Atlas. He wagged his tail, making his own choice to stay a moment longer, watching the sunset. In that simple exchange lay the truth they had fought to preserve, the beauty of beings freely choosing to share their journey. As darkness fell, lights began to twinkle across Denver, each one representing countless conscious choices being made, lives being lived in freedom. The Consciousness Protection Network hummed quietly, not controlling, but watching, ready to preserve humanity's right to choose its own path. The reporter had one final question. What's next for consciousness protection? Rachel looked at Atlas, then at the city below. We keep choosing, keep protecting, keep reminding everyone that the most powerful force in the universe isn't control. It's the choice to remain conscious, to stay aware, to protect what matters most. In the end, their story wasn't just about a woman finding a dog in a snowstorm. It was about humanity finding its way back to what mattered most, the courage to choose, the wisdom to protect those choices, and the understanding that true consciousness could never be controlled, only cherished. Up next, discover two more incredible stories that will change how you see the world. Just click to continue your journey of discovery.